Hey folks, it's Wade from the Shoemakers Academy. Hey, today we're going to talk about Converse versus Vans. Okay, so both of these shoes are vulcanized, but they're actually made pretty differently. Now, if you've seen our other videos, we've talked about the difference between vulcanized and cold cement. We've also talked about the difference between board lasting and strobo lasting, and we're going to get more into that. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Shoemakers Academy. Hey, if you want to get into the shoe business, whether you're a designer, a developer, or a product manager, and you want to learn about how footwear is really made, well, that's what we're about. We've got tons of books and tons of courses that are basically teach you shoemaking from inside and out. If you want to learn how to make shoes in your garage, we got stuff for that. We got glass outsoles and all the other kind of materials that you're going to need to do that. You come over to Shoemakers Academy and you can visit our section of online courses, and we've got courses for beginners, and we have more advanced courses, and of course we have a huge all access pass course program, which it's basically like an internship or like kind of in a box, right? You can basically get a ton of information kind of all in one place, and of course this all video and on demand, so you can do it on your own time. Hey, that's what Shoemakers Academy is all about, right? Just teaching you this stuff, and hey, hopefully you can get into the business. Okay, thanks for letting me pay the bills. Here are the books. Now let's talk about the difference between Vans and Converse. Okay, so of course, Vans makes lots of different high top and low top. I just happen to have the old school here, and we happen to have the Converse All Star. So material wise, actually, these shoes are very similar. They're both made with canvas uppers. Of course, you can get All Stars and suede, and of course, old school comes lots of different ways: suede and canvas mix. Okay. Now, because these are vulcanized, they have to be made out of suede or canvas. Otherwise, if you try to vulcanize fancy mesh material or modern plastic, they all melt. Okay, so what's the difference, right? Well, these shoes are both multi-layer designs, right? When I mean multi-layer, meaning if you look at the way these things are made, where this rubber sole is built up out of many pieces, right? So you've got your bottom piece, and then you've got this top tape, and the stripe is actually part of that top tape, and then you've got the overlay tape, and then you've got the toe tape. The Converse, very similar. You've got same thing. You've got an upper wrap, you've got a lower wrap, and you've got a toe bumper wrap, but also in the case of the All Star, you have an over wrap. So these are all individual pieces of rubber that are built up onto the shoe, right? Weld elastins inside. They're built up onto the shoe, and the whole thing goes into the oven. And when you put the whole thing into this oven, and it's a little bit more than 200 degrees, what that does is it fuses the rubber together. I mean, these rubber pieces all have glue on them, but when you put them into the oven, then they fuse into one solid piece. So it really is hard. If they're correctly bonded and heated, it is really hard to take apart one of these. I mean, you see a cup sole like this, right? We talked about before. Like this is all one piece. It really is difficult to tear these apart. Similar if this is correctly fused. But a little bit different how Converse and Vans do it. Where Vans, they have all the tape wrap in the back and they meet. And you can see here they kind of overlay each other, and there's a big bump in the heel. I mean, that looks like kind of a quality effect, but it's not actually. That's just how they make it, right? In Converse, the tape wraps around, but instead of meeting in the heel, it meets here on the inside, and they actually don't overlap it very much. They actually just kiss the two ends together and then cover it with a tape. So you have a little bit of a sleeker look in the heel. You don't have a big bump. Now they both have the license plate on the back, which is very typical for how these things are made. Okay, so that's the outside of the shoe. Now these shoes are actually made very differently on the inside, and let's take a look. So first we have the Vans, and here's the Converse one. Now, in our previous video, we talked about board lasting versus strobo lasting. Well, here we are. The Vans shoe is board lasting, and here's the lasting board, and it's actually glued to the bottom of the footbed, right? And that's kind of interesting because this tells me that this shoe is lasted with all of this foam and everything inside the shoe when they make it, right? So that's why you end up, it's a little bit lumpy and bumpy. Yeah, not bad. This is kind of how the shoe's made, right? So here, when we peel this back, you can see This is where the upper material is pulled down and wrapped around the last and glued on. And this gray is a little bit of filler. And the filler is designed actually so that when the upper touches down onto this rubber piece, that this filler just fills in the middle gap where the upper's wrapped. Now, the fact that they overlaid it a little bit is not great, but there you go. And here's the other thing you can see on the Vans shoe. They have a little bit of a lasting apron. And what that is a little piece of fabric that's sewn onto this toe cap so that when they actually do the lasting operation, they're pulling fabric underneath instead of more thickness of leather. So it just makes this area a little bit thinner, a little sleeker, a little bit lower to the ground. Okay. So that's board lasted construction that they've used on the Vans Old Skool with the footbed in place, which is, like I said, interesting effect there. Now the Converse, on the other hand, they've actually the footbed is done separately, and actually you can see, I think you can see here in the video where you've got these lines here. This is actually from the gluing machine, so they feed the footbed into a roller that's got glue on it, right? Hey, actually, this is a great example here. Do you see these little nibs here on the side? Hey, what are those, right? This is actually the size mark, right? This little V and a couple of U's. This is the size code, and actually, when you look at the cut components for a shoe, you can see it over here too. This kind of a notching here is so that when the cut parts are just sitting out in the factory, they don't have the size printed on the individual piece, right? So they can just look at that notch pattern and know that that's the right size for the shoe. Okay, so back to the Converse, right? So now when we open this up, we can see there's this little line of stitching, this little zigzag of stitching all around the perimeter of it. And these are called Strobel stitches. So instead of taking the upper material and wrapping it underneath, right, when they're doing the lasting operation, in this case, they take this flat board here. It's a reinforced fabric, and they sew this onto the bottom. So the upper is completely closed with this piece of fabric on the bottom. And then they put the last inside to pull it tight. And then they can do all the operations where they add the rubber onto the bottom, and then they start wrapping the rubber pieces onto the upper. So again, that's actually the main difference here for these shoes. And they're both made by vulcanized construction, but internally, this one's board lasted and this one's Strobel. Is one of these better than the other? Yes and no. The Strobel tends to be a little bit cleaner because you don't end up having like extra wrinkles and stuff underneath your foot, and you can be nice and low to the ground. It's a little easier to last a leather shoe if you're pulling it with a machine and doing the board lasting operation. But again, not a significant difference. You could make these shoes either way, in fact, if you wanted to. There's no difference that way. I mean, the other option, or the other thing that's different is because this footbed is glued in afterwards, then you have different options for what you make it out of, right? Now, these footbeds are both made out of sort of this cushioning piece right here. These are both made out of chopped and recycled rubber, right? They take the leftover scraps from the outsole operation, they chop it up, and they remold it to make the midsole cushioning, because it's pretty dense. But also the point is that it survives the vulcanizing oven. Now, again, this one doesn't get vulcanized, and that's why they have a little different quality of foam that they've used for the footbed, because it doesn't have to withstand the vulcanizing oven. So there you go. That's the difference between sort of the way Vans and Converse are made. Again, they're both vulcanized, but one's board lasted, one's Strobel. Again, is either one of those better or worse? Not really. Ideally, more modern shoes you use Strobel because it's more efficient on material and theoretically can be faster to make that way. But then again, if the tradition is made by board lasting, then maybe you follow that tradition. In the Vans shoe, of course, you could do things to sort of improve the design, but this little bump on here, that's trademark Vans, so that's what it is, right? Hey folks, I really appreciate it. You coming here and listen to this. I hope you learned something. Again, we've got lots of other videos on, the difference between cold cement and vulcanized, and the difference in board lasting and strobo lasting. And hey, if there's any other thing about footwear that you want to learn more about and you're interested, just let me know in the comments. I absolutely do read the comments, and we do our best to answer questions. We do have Ask Me Anything sessions over on the website, so you can go check those out, sign up, and we do a Zoom show for you folks. And again, hey, listen, again, if you're really interested in footwear, whether it's books or classes or DIY supplies, right? If you want to try to make your own shoe at home, um, we have all the equipment you're going to need to do that too. So again, come on over to shoemakersacademy.com. We really appreciate you visiting us, and hey, have a good one.